this is about the digestive process, and this is about the physicalness. The first run through we're going to do is on the physicalness of the digestive process, and you've got this on your information book, first page. Okay, so what I would suggest, you can see at the top it says also read NFD chapters 2, 4, 5, 6 and 7, NFD Nutrition for Dummies. So you see it has got some AMP in it, but it's not at a level that you need. You need a little bit more, but so this is why we're filling in the extra bit. Now, physically, the first place that digestion starts is in the mouth. Okay. It was interesting, as I was mulling over this in bed last night, one of Stuart Mitchell's phrases came to mind, and it's relevant both physically and mechanically and for chemistry of digestion. He always used to say, you need to chew your soup. Okay, which gives you an idea of, as well as what some of the problems that come about just with digestion in the mouth. So primarily, what the mouth is theoretically there for is the teeth are obviously there to grind everything down. The tongue is there to push food around in the mouth while you're actually chewing and breaking things down physically from large lumps into little lumps. And it's while that's going on, it's allowing the saliva, which is part of the chemistry stuff, to actually intermix with the food. Okay. So obviously, if people aren't chewing, this is an absolute classic, isn't it? Mm-hmm. You have to sit and chew your food, for X length of time to actually get digestion going. But if people don't chew, then this is the first problem when it comes further down the line in digestion. So if they're not actually breaking things down into little pieces, and therefore also not chewing long enough for the enzyme, the chemistry bit to start in the mouth, then the food itself isn't going to be in a fit state when it gets further down the system.
It's interesting because my father has a lot of digestion problems, and he has got very poor dentures. He hasn't got any back teeth at all, and the number of times he chokes when he's eating because he's not obviously chewing it up properly.
And you find as well is that people who are racing through their food, aren't going to, and sometimes of course children aren't going to actually chew well enough. And like you say, people with any sort of tooth problem or gum problem, if their gums are particularly sore, the gums are bleeding, or they've got really raging toothache or something like that, is going to actually create problems with this very first process. And the thing is this very first process doesn't happen, it doesn't have to be perfect, it's not being stupid about it. But if this first process isn't done enough, everything else that comes on after is going to have a problem. And it's really worth thinking about for yourself, and when you're listening to people, I know people, if you say to them, you need to chew everything however many times, they
37 times.
They'll sort of glaze over in front of you. You can see it happening. It's like, up yours. I'm not going to do that. That sort of thing.
Yada yada yada.
Yeah, exactly. But you can see where the sense in that instruction comes.
I did an anatomy and physiology course last year with Brian, actually, with Pip Waller.
Yeah.
And one of the things that she said about extra chewing is then chew your soup thing. When you chew more, I would find that I would eat less because I got fuller much quicker than I did if I was just eating normally.
Yeah.
And then I'd have stuff left on my plate. I don't really need to eat that. And I'd realise that if I was eating slowly and chewing properly, then you probably eat a third less food than you would normally do.
And that's to do with what happens with the chemistry further down the body, with the various hormones and that are released to tell you that you're full up.
It takes 20 minutes from starting your meal to the end for it to register that you're full.
Yes, and if it's that's right, because otherwise, by the time you're finished. Your body hasn't had a chance to say it's full, because the hormone that gets released that says to the body that I'm full up does take that long length of time. And so by taking longer over your food, at least chewing certainly, then actually you do eat less. So when it comes to things like, I'm quite sure that the thing that's on the national curriculum, understanding nutrition and weight management, it's not what they had in mind, this stuff. This is not what that module, I think, was really about. But it's from a holistic point of view, this is where we're at with it. It's looking at stuff like this, is actually people overeating in the proper sense of the word, not just sitting there and just stuffing, but not allowing the natural processes of the body to take place in their natural run-through about how long.
It's also bringing mindfulness to it.
And of course that's coming in at another level. Then it's bringing in awareness, which is a mental, spiritual level, which of course on a Joe Blogs, I was thinking about the diet, what I call the dietitian level of stuff, when it's very, very factual, is that's not taken into account, is how aware people are of what they're actually doing. But hopefully, if taking a holistic view, you're actually going to be much more aware of what's actually going on, as far as that's concerned. And of course, like Stuart's lovely throwaway comment about chewing your soup, that is actually an issue. Is when you're having food that's been liquidized, or is in a liquid format. You still have to have time enough in the mouth for the food that's in the mouth to actually get mixed and to actually have all the processes going on in the mouth.
Adding the saliva to it,
Because otherwise it's not going to be digested further down. And this again, so it's like people opting for juicing. Now, talk about, things that are the in at the moment. It's like, I wonder how many people are aware who are juicing are aware that they have to give whatever they've juiced time in the mouth, and not just sort of glug, 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 glug down the hatch. So this is what I mean by, propaganda, stroke media, stroke social stuff going on at the moment. It's really understanding that this becomes an issue, as far as actually what's going on when somebody's eating.
Because I see in hospital a lot of people that have had poor diet for years and they're very underweight, and they put them on these build-up drinks and they're just full of sugar.
Yeah.
They taste disgusting.
Yeah, but the thing is as well is like is that really the best way to build somebody up? I mean, it's certainly not going to break habit patterns.
No.
Gut is a habit pattern that sometimes comes from. And this is when you have to think about it when someone's talking to you. Is it because of how they're working? Is it because they're only given half hour for lunch? Is it due to what are the constraints? Is it just habit? Has it come from the family? Why are they doing this? I mean, we really notice it in Japan because they eat a lot of puns. They only have about half hour for lunch. And they sit there with a bowl full of steaming noodles. I mean, God, they must have asbestos inside. I have never seen people gulp down steaming noodles at that rate. It's like, and I mean, I have to let it cool for 5 minutes before you can get it in my mouth. So, of course, the amount that you can eat is minimal. So you're not getting anything. But it's like, and you're thinking then, is all right, you think that's very efficient, and obviously it's a learned quality since they were knee-high to grasshopper. They, like we said, they got asbestos mouths. But we're actually realising, from a nutrition point of view, that's actually a really bad habit. That is not doing the job.
So people walking around eating fast food all the time, that is just dreadful, isn't it? I can't stand seeing that. Yeah, but
it's like, it's the beginning of the cascade of not being full. Yeah, so
needing more and eating
and
more.
needing even more to think that you're full up.
Yeah.
You know, and it's what the national thingy is about, because they're more in about, you know, when they say weight management, it's all about sort of doing other stuff. But it's actually, it comes back to the very beginning. It's like, you know, making rules. You know, when you eat, you sit down. You know, it's that sort of stuff. And you sometimes hear people say it on the telly, you know, when you see these programmes. They're saying to people, no, don't eat on the run.
It's true.
You know, sit down, take your time. You've got to understand why you do it.
That would explain then why a lot of the continental people don't put on the weight that we do, because they have long lunches.
Lovely long lunches.
Lovely long lunch, and also it's to some extent it's the way they eat, and it's because it's done.
And it's how they feel about their food.
Yeah,
mindfully,
reverently.
Yeah, that's right. I know whenever you've been watching the Young Montalbano on BBC 4 on Saturday nights, it's hilarious. It's the Sicilian detective, and this is the young version, and they did Endeavour, you know, the young Morse. And he, even as a grown-up detective, he's got to think about his food. When he has his food, he won't talk when he's eating. You know? And you can see, and it's hilarious. He has a food put in front of him, and he's like, oh, this looks good. And he's like, just starting, and someone will come up, and he'll say, I will not talk and eat at the same time.
That's certainly the way it was in India.
Yeah, and it's the reverence that the food is, you know, it's like, this is, and it's, you
Holy
know,
Grail.
it's good food. We're talking good food, but it's the reverence with the food is associated with it. And it's something that I think certainly it's not, you can't even say the West, you know, in developed, I'm not going to say developed countries, but in countries where time has become a thing, is that, become a pressure. This is lost. And so the primary mechanical part of digesting food has simply gone out the window. And then it does make you wonder, you know, this is why it's so easy for me to become overweight. You know, and it is part of it. They've lost their reverence for what they're eating. And I think that's, collectively, that's probably something that is happening a lot.
Yeah, I think I can put my hand up to that one.
But, I mean, you know, it's like and it's easy to fall into that pattern, especially if you're around other people that are in that pattern. You know, and I think it's probably a hard thing to instill in kids when they're going to be amongst other kids who have the opposite view. You know, it's like, then what do you do?
Well, everybody's working, you know, hurry up, you know, eat your meal because we've got to go out.
Yeah. So this is the sort of thing that as an advisor you come up against. You know, and it's like, so it's finding ways, even if you sort of give up and you think, okay, lunchtime's a write-off. Okay, I'm not even going to try with this person, or even try with myself at lunchtime. You know, breakfast, evening meal, then they're done properly. You know, you can't be too rigid about this stuff. You've got to have enough flexibility, otherwise people won't listen to you. They'll just think, you know, yada yada yada, and it go over their head. Too hard. You have to be. You've got to focus. You know, because if you're not, you won't get anywhere, and people won't like they won't be able to put into practice what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I think that's the primary thing. It's no good, you know, having all the factual stuff there if you can't actually understand or put yourself in the situation they're in and understand the pressures that they're under or their kids are under, or, you know, to actually try and fit in to modern life today. It's like saying not everybody's got an hour and a half, 2 hours they can do for their lunch and spend the next half hour after their lunch just sitting there doing nothing while the food digests.
Is that what you're supposed to do then?
Oh, probably. you know, because you know, it's to give the body. It just doesn't happen. You know, it's like you've got to realise that the constraints of actually what's going on. So that's the first part of what's happening. So when the food is got into its lovely sort of salivary, chewed up, theoretically minuscule pieces, bit, okay, it then starts its journey, okay, down the esophagus. Okay, Now, there's a special name given to the food when it's in this state, and it's called bolus. B-O-L-U-S. This is what it's called as it leaves the mouth, when it's in a little lump. It's called a bolus. Okay. And it travels down the esophagus. Now, the first mechanical little thingy it hits, actually, and it's actually not shown here on here on the diagram, is there is a little sphincter. It's called the cardiac sphincter, which is a shame that it's called that, because people then think the cardiac sphincter is in the heart. It ain't. The cardiac sphincter is just above the stomach. It's about the level of the diaphragm. Okay. Now here we hit one of these fantastic design flaws in the human being.
So how do you spell sphincter?
S-P-H-I-N-C-T-E-R.
S-P-H-I-N sphincter.
Yeah. These were fantastic design flaws. It's on the level with about the same level as the diaphragm. So the diaphragm is a huge muscle that comes across underneath the lungs, but is above organs. Okay, and it's the relaxing down of the diaphragm that actually allows the lungs to inflate. Okay, whoever got to play around with bell jars and balloons when you were a kid to show that that's how it works. Now, the thing is that huge muscle, and it's a big muscle, okay, has got this tiny little hole in it where the esophagus goes through. Okay. Now, what happens when people get really stressed?
They don't breathe properly.
Yeah.
They don't breathe properly. Everything goes solid, doesn't it?
Mm.
You know, or they're either not breathing deeply at all. It's either up here, but it's like this bit here. A lot of people shallow breathe. I mean, if you've ever done anything to do with yoga or breathing exercise, you know that a lot of people just breathe with the top part of their lungs. Very few people really take in, you know, using like babies do when their tummies go up and down. Yeah. You know, you don't see many, except if you're in yoga class doing breathing exercise, you don't see many adults' tummies go up and down. But of course the trouble is that when people just top breathe, and when people are very, very stressed, is that part of the diaphragm, it becomes actually very rigid.
Mm.
And as the rigidity comes in, there's pressure on where and if it really gets very stressed, that little valve doesn't work the way it should. Because theoretically, as food comes down the esophagus, the little valve opens. Okay, and when it's gone past, the little valve closes, and it keeps the food in the stomach. Now that's the theory. Now, when people are very, very stressed, what sometimes happens is that whole thing gets out of sync.
So we call it reflux.
Yeah. Is when that little valve stays open, when it should be closed, there's nothing to stop all the stomach contents from coming back up again. Mm. So the rigidity of the diaphragm can actually cause a lot of issues to do with people having problems swallowing. You know, or they can probably get it past here, or sometimes if they're very, very stressed, they can't even get it past here. Yeah, or it goes down so far, and they can tell there's something not right. But the most common one is that little sphincter stays open, and so the contents of the stomach come back up again. And the stomach, as you find out this afternoon, is incredibly acid. So it can do a lot of damage. I mean, not it's like if you've ever been sick. Mm-hmm. You know, it's all right if you're sick fairly soon after you eat, because it's not really had a chance to really get going. But if it's been one of those horrible buggy things and you've been 3 hours trying to keep it down, and in the end the body says, "You're joking," and off it comes back up again. That's when it's really, really unpleasant. And of course, it's one of the reasons when people who are bulimic, why their teeth get shot to shreds, is because when that stuff comes back up again, the acidity wrecks the teeth. I mean, not that you'd be stupid enough to do it, a really sour apple or a piece of lemon. If you suck that, you can actually feel the dentin on the teeth actually getting to be really quite soft. And you can imagine that that's just the acidity of an apple. When you've got something that's very acid, like stomach contents, it's actually going to start destroying.
My daughter, when she was about 15, I was with her. We always used to go to the dentist. And it was at this point that we realised she got an eating disorder because the dentist picked up on the enamel was going thin on her front teeth.
Yeah.
And she was being bulimic.
Yeah.
My son's got problems. My little boy, who's got the dairy intolerance, has got problems with the enamel in his front teeth.
No,
it's usually the top one.
Yeah, it depends whether it's the back or the front.
Well, he sucks his thumb as well, because I thought it was about him sucking his thumb.
It may be.
But also because of his problem with dairy, I wonder if he's got an over-acidy stomach.
And this is where it comes this afternoon when we start talking about the chemistry of what's going on.
Yeah.
Is why it becomes, that's when these little penny drops that of actually what's happening in a lot of situations. Yeah.
I'm going to change his content, the acidity in his stomach, that might help.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and I said we'd talk about the enzymes in this afternoon.
So if somebody's had a gastric band fitted, where would it be fitted? Because it's around there somewhere, isn't it?
It's usually fitted.
There's a few different ways of doing it. Sometimes they do it along the length.
Yeah.
So that it's more of a...
Yeah. It depends a little bit on who's doing it. They don't always work. My sister-in-law had one done and it broke. I mean, she is incredibly overweight, had a stomach band, didn't seem to make an awful lot of difference. It broke because she was still eating what she was eating. So in the end they did a bypass. Oh. She's now lost all this weight, and yet she still eats exactly the same as she ever did. So it hasn't actually solved the problem.
Because a friend of mine that had it done, we were away together, and she would eat, and then she'd have to rush off because she was eating too much.
Yeah.
And then she'd have to go and be sick.
Yeah.
I said, but this can't be right. Oh, well, she was making all these excuses.
Because the whole point of having a stomach band is that you feel full because the stomach fills up, and supposedly the stomach giving its "I'm full," which actually sort of doesn't, but that's the theory.
That feeling of being full.
That theory of being full. But it doesn't. The whole point is if you are that overweight, doing this, it's all right. It's a quick fix, but it ain't going to fix the problem.
No. She had to have surgery in the end because it all grew into the start.
Oh no, I know, it's absolutely scary what goes on, but yeah. Okay, so the first mechanical thing that there is, you've got your cardiac sphincter. So people who are very, very stressed, quite often, they will have problems with this area. And of course, one of the other problems that happens with this area is where you've got the diaphragm sitting above the digestive organs of the spleen, the liver, and the rest. Of course, if somebody's really, really stressed, what happens is that lesions happen, holes happen in the diaphragm. And if you get a little hole there, the stomach lining pops up and it becomes a hiatus hernia.
Right.
And that's what hiatus hernia is. Okay.
So those little the holes are actually in the diaphragm?
In the diaphragm. Small holes in the diaphragm. And then what happens is the stomach lining sticks through. And of course you can imagine, if someone's that stressed, that
it's stress that causes those holes.
And it's also poor breathing, Yeah, I mean, it's like anything with a muscle. Lack of oxygen.
Properly.
Sorry?
Not using it properly.
And it's mostly stress will actually create hiatus hernia. But of course, then the symptoms of hiatus hernia, reflux, acid reflux, that sort of thing, is going to be the same because it's basically, if that's happening, then probably the cardiac sphincter is not working in the order that it should. It's jammed open when it should be shut, or it's jammed shut when it should be open. It's that sort of thing. And so the actual structure is going to create problems. But that's what hiatus hernia is.
And can you reverse that effect?
Yeah, serious de-stress usually.
To de-stress, it will just.
And get breathing properly. Yeah. Yeah, because if you de-stress somebody, what you'll find is that the diaphragm will work better, the cardiac sphincter will start working a little bit better, and the whole area there will become a little bit more coherent. I mean, it may not completely get rid of the lesion, but the tendency for the stomach to stick up through it is probably. I mean, usually surgery is what they do; they just go in and they stitch it together. But as a holistic therapist, I found that de-stressing people big time usually does the trick as well. But of course, when it's looked at from an orthodox point of view, it's not looked at from an emotional. They're not taking the emotional view.
Model.
Yeah, they're just taking the straight, dry functioning. The body's not functioning, so let's fix it. And of course, you can imagine, even if that's stitched together, if that person is still terribly, terribly stressed, it's going to go find another one, isn't it?
Well, it's like when you fix a piece of clothing on a really under stress part, it's just going to
tear somewhere else.
Yeah, the stitch is going to make it even easier for it to tear
somewhere else. And this is basically the problem that you have.
Mm.
Okay.